We'll try to go through this pretty quickly, but Brittany has a lot of information to cover. So, first of all, I'm Nancy Melberg. I'm a principal at SVA. I am the leader of a group called our Management Advisory Services Group. Brittany is part of our group, as well as Craig sitting up here. So our group, other than doing just traditional tax and accounting work, we do a lot of consultative work. Software being one of them. We can help people identify the right systems, implement them, train them, along with a slew of other things, succession planning, mergers and acquisitions, valuation work. So that's a little bit about our group. So Brittany is our QuickBooks expert, so I am going to kick it off to her.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here. My name is Brittany. Like Nancy said, I work in the Management Advisory Services Group. I have been in accounting for almost 7 years. I've been a QuickBooks Pro Advisor for 6 of them, so basically the entire time. So I know a ton about QuickBooks. I'm not sure if any of you are users, QuickBooks users, anybody? No? You are?
Because this is such a small group too, feel free to just holler out questions. Let's make this as interactive as possible.
So I'm not sure if you're on the online version or the desktop version. Desktop? Okay, so I'm going to cover mainly the online version today, but if you have any desktop questions, I can probably answer them.
So can you define the difference between the 2024 online version and the 2024 online desktop version? Same or different?
Well, very different. So the online version is a cloud-based system, so you don't have to go through that install. You just type in Google QuickBooks Online, sign in, and it's always going to be there. Versus the desktop version is something that they're actually sunsetting away from. So eventually it's going to go away. You won't be able to use the desktop version.
So one of the things real quick that I don't know if people realize is QuickBooks Online version was actually a different company. It was a proprietary system that QuickBooks bought off of a different company. And the only reason I bring that up is because for people converting from desktop to online, it's a very, very different look and feel. Now, over the past probably 20 years since I bought this, they've made significant changes to the online version. I was not a big fan of it at all, hated it, told people never make the switch. I'm warming up to it. Brittany has done a good job convincing me. But it is a little bit different look and feel. But QuickBooks has definitely tried to make some of the terminology the same and make it look a little bit better and have a little bit more features.
Oh yeah, I'm a really big QuickBooks Online fan. I love it. I think it's great. I learned how to use QuickBooks on it. So hopefully you guys learned something today. If you have any questions at any point, let me know. So I'll just get right into it. With QuickBooks Online, there are 5 different subscription levels. The top one being relatively new. It's called QuickBooks Online Ledger. It's right around $10 a month. It's only available through your accountant. So you'd have to go through them as an avenue. You would have to be a QuickBooks Online accountant user to grant that access to your clients. It's really good if they have very basic needs, really just the general ledger, their banking features, which is something that connects with your online bank accounts, pulls those transactions in, makes that data entry more automated, less time consuming. So the next 2 versions are very small. I won't spend a ton of time on them. The simple start is $30 a month. Essential is going to be $60 a month. So they're really cost effective, very basic needs, basic features. I'm going to spend the majority of the time talking about the last 2. So QuickBooks Online Plus is typically what we see our clients using. It's $90 a month, but you get way more features. So more reporting capability, inventory, project costing, and last, the QuickBooks Online Advanced is what I'll spend the majority of the time talking about. So that's $200 a month, but it is, I always say it's like the Mac Daddy of all QuickBooks. You can do, there's so many features and it's constantly evolving. There's always new features coming out, always new functions that you can do. So I'm going to touch on a few of those new features today that I'm finding a lot of my clients don't really know that these exist or these tools are out there. So I'll briefly talk about QuickBooks Online Plus. I mentioned that you could do inventory and job costing. So with job costing, I won't talk about it a lot just because it's really in the details. It's a lot to set up unless you have a need for it. I wouldn't recommend getting QuickBooks Online Plus just for that job costing. So with the inventory, I don't really recommend QuickBooks Inventory, but if you have a need for it, you would at least have to get the Online Plus version. So it's FIFO only, So you're very limited on, if you have specialized needs for inventory, you might have to seek an outside system. You know, it might integrate with QuickBooks, which would be beneficial.
And FIFO, just in case anyone doesn't know, it's the method of valuing inventory first in, first out. There's several different methods. FIFO is probably the most common among like retails, distribution. So it might be okay in those industries, but certainly not if you were a manufacturer or had any type of complex inventory, maybe kitting or anything like that, certainly beyond the capabilities of QuickBooks.
Yeah, so QuickBooks also offers a budgeting tool. It's available with a forecast. It's a recent addition, as you can do budgets with forecasts. It's very limited, so they give you a template, and that's what it is. So you get their template, and you have to work around it. It's helpful. It's beneficial. I have a ton of clients who use it and who rely on it, and I would recommend it if you want some of that budgeting features. So for QuickBooks Online Advanced, this is what I'm going to talk about. Some of these more in depth as the slides go on, but this data sync is kind of a newer feature. I noticed a lot of clients that I have don't really know that this is out there as an option. So basically what data sync is it's an integration with Microsoft Excel, and it allows the two systems to talk. So you can create reports, enter data in Excel, and I'll touch more on this in the next slide, but moving on to custom access controls, I just talked about budgets with QuickBooks Online Plus, and I think the best way to talk about what is a custom access control. So this is going to be if you have employees, and you know you want very limited visibility inside the QuickBooks file. With QuickBooks Online Advanced, you can say, I want this employee to only work on budgets. I want this employee to only be able to see, you know, accounts receivable. That's their sole job, is entering accounts receivable.
So other systems probably call this security, employee security. What do you want to hide from your employees versus what do you want to share with them? It's just having the visibility into the data.
Yes, and then the automated workflows, this is also relatively new in the online version. They can send you little reminders. It can help streamline your accounts receivable and your accounts payable process. I'll talk about that more on later as well. Revenue recognition. This is also relatively new. So in QuickBooks, you can set up a schedule, and QuickBooks will help you recognize revenue during the right periods, but it only works as well as you set it up. So if you don't set it up right from the beginning, it's going to start just creating those manual entries as you go on, and before you know, you could have revenue that's completely out of whack.
So Brittany, an example of this could be if you sell an annual subscription and you only want to recognize 1/12 every month. That's what it would do. So it is a little bit simplified that you say, this is my annual revenue that I'm collecting now, but I only want to recognize 1/12 of that income for the next year. And so when we get into Intacct, I'll talk a little bit about some of the more sophisticated systems that are out there, but this is nice to have for, you know, we talk about like prepaid insurance. I don't know if any of you deal with where you're selling some insurance and you're receiving your income right away, and you're going to recognize it over the policy. Probably a lot of people see it on the expense side. It would be similar on the revenue side.
And the last thing I have up on the slide is the custom report builder. So I'm actually going to do a small demo on this that will kind of show you what it looks like, some of the things you can do with it. But for the longest time, I think some of the Intuit customers were like, this is all really great, but the one thing we're missing is good reporting. We have all this data, we have it in, we have all this automation in place, but you don't give us a ton of reports, so we can't really pile this and make decisions off of it. We're kind of limited to your 4 basic reports. So I think they really listened with the advanced version, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like and run through a little example. So I want to talk a little bit more about this data sync with Excel, because like it's really fascinating. I could probably talk for hours on this. So basically, it's an integration with Microsoft Office, specifically Excel. And what you can do is, once you sign in and you get it loaded, you'll see a QuickBooks icon at the top of your Excel page. And if you click on that icon, it'll bring up all of your QuickBooks information. So if you want to run a report, you can do it right in Excel. If you want to add information, you can do it right in Excel. And I think a really good example of this is changing a bunch of invoices at once, or a bunch of expenses at once. You know, you're not able to do that manual repetitive. I don't want to open this expense 9 times and save and close because I accidentally put I don't know, 25 transactions in the wrong account and I want to go back and fix that really fast, this tool's going to let you do that.
Or, not to interrupt, but or if your accountant is looking at your year end and saying, oh my goodness, why did you post all of these transactions here? I need you to move them. Instead of making a journal entry and losing the detail, to Brittany's point, you could go in and like do the entire year in this one transaction, and it'll actually retain the detail then when someone drills down on it. So that's a really powerful feature. From internal controls, a little bit scary, but
still powerful. I think what's good about this is, you know, a lot of clients are making that shift from desktop to QuickBooks Online because they're sunsetting the pro versions for desktop. And what's good is that it allows clients to maybe make some changes that they wouldn't have otherwise made because it is so labor intensive to make those. You know, I want to redo my entire chart of accounts. All you have to do is export it into Excel, make those changes, and it'll load right back up into your QuickBooks Online file. So there's a tab on running multi-company reports. This is going to be if you have, you know, like filing a consolidated tax return, you need 4 trial balances, you want to put them all into one. This will make that really easy for you. So it'll pull all of the information from your different QuickBooks companies and put them in one report. Lastly, the managing budgets feature. So I know I just said with QuickBooks budgets that it was really limited. This makes it a little bit easier. So let's say you're running a budget out of a different system and you want to import that into QuickBooks. So if you're in the Plus version, you're not going to be able to do that. But in the advanced version, if you have some good Excel background, you can maybe manipulate the data, copy and paste it into their format. It makes it a lot easier to import some of that data. And again, with the forecast, you can use what you import into a budget feature to create forecasts.
So does everybody know the difference between a budget and a forecast? Because I find that a lot of people don't understand the difference. So a budget is something you set in place, like people might actually be working on their budget soon for next year. So you set a budget in place and you leave a budget because this is what you hope to do next year, what you're going to try to accomplish. A forecast is actually, now let's say I'm in January and already January is not going so well. Forecast would be, what do I think the year is going to look like now? So based on this is what I'm projecting the year to look like based on where I actually am versus a budget where I hoped to be. So I cringe when people say, well, I just changed my budget, because you should never change a budget. You would have an explanation for management on why you didn't hit the budget or for the board, but you wouldn't change the budget, but you would be changing forecasts every month as you go. So if you were reporting to a board, you would say, I know we were budgeting, you know, $100,000 in income, but it looks like for my forecast, we're gonna end up with only $25,000 and here's why. So forecasts can change, budgets do not.
Exactly, and you know, with some of my clients who do use this feature, I have noticed there are some drawbacks, one of them being formatting. So I kind of touched on this earlier. Intuit gives you the formatting and you have to adhere to that. So there is no changing it. Once you change that formatting, you're essentially disrupting the language between the two systems and it no longer really understands what you're trying to import into the software. So it's important to maintain that formatting as you use this moving forward. I have primary administrator listed up here, but what I mean by that is it's good to have somebody just in charge of this, because what can end up happening is if you have staff using it, they're manipulating, changing, deleting, adding data, which can get messy pretty fast. So it's good to have somebody kind of in charge of this, a primary admin. And I have multiple users up here. So if there are multiple people working within the file, you know, it being a cloud-based software, you can have many users, and the advanced version, you can have unlimited users. So you can have a lot of staff, owners working inside QuickBooks at once, and if they're changing something that maybe you're working on inside of DataSync, it could create a lot of problems. You can have duplicates, accidentally delete something. So it's just something to be mindful when using this tool. Okay, so I talked about the custom report builder. So I'm actually just gonna show you, really, it's easier, but I have some limitations up here, and we'll kind of go through those limitations as we work in.
The mouse is not working though.
Oh. Okay, I'll use the keyboard. So I'll kind of walk through some of these limitations as I get into the QuickBooks, just because it's easier to show you, which is why I wanted to include a demo. Okay, let's get that. I also want to note that right now I'm logging into a QuickBooks Online Advanced sample company, and this is free for everybody to use. So this is out there. If you're maybe considering getting QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced, I'm happy to send you this link so you can test drive it yourself, play around with some of the features that we're talking about. Okay, I direct my clients to this all the time, especially the ones that we are considering moving from the desktop to the online version. So with this custom reporting tool, once you're inside of your company, this being a sample company, you're going to toggle to this reports feature on the left. And hypothetically, we're going to run a report that is going to show sales by location, so sales by state. So you can kind of pick based off of what they have up here, or if you click on this Create New Report button, it's going to give you some templates. I think that with these, it's, again, kind of like what I said, formatting-wise with Intuit, you can't just write your own report. I mean, you can filter and play around and customize, but you can't create something from scratch.
So what about, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can go back one.
Yeah.
Those different things that Brittany was picking from, and I'm gonna not get too technical, but these here, these would be tables, and then within all these tables, there's fields. And so once she clicks on a table, it's gonna give her all the fields within that table that she can report information on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's one of my limitations is the fields that, like, you can't just create a new one. Like, the fields that are in here are the fields that you're able to choose from. I actually think, you know, as complex as this can get, I think it makes it a little bit easier because you're not trying to, what's the word, like, overcompensate, write a report that's maybe too complicated. So you have options, and who knows, like, you might stumble across creating something.
I'm going to show you, like, in Intacct, each table has thousands of fields. And when I'm writing a custom report for a client, I often have to pick what I think would be in there and then preview it and go, nope, that's not what I want. And then I have to go back and keep doing that. You know, sometimes it'll take 15, 20 times to get what I want because it's not as simple as just QuickBooks makes it.
Exactly, and you know, I have a lot of clients who are very visual, so they appreciate kind of, this will spit out like a bar graph, so I'll show you what that looks like, and they kind of appreciate some of these features when it comes time to talking about the numbers. Like, they don't want to see a list, they would rather see a picture. So right now I'm just going to kind of remove some of the things from this report that aren't really important to what I'm trying to accomplish. So right now I kind of want to look for something along the lines that's going to tell me, where was this shift, where was this bill, so we can kind of see sales by state. So hypothetically, there are multiple different states in here, because if I try to change this in a sample company, it just reverts back to what it was before. But let's say there are all of these different states in here, and let's say you want to even drill down and see this created user is, let's say this created user is your employee who created the invoice. It's kind of a way to track their sales. So now we have invoices for last quarter by billing state, by user, and you want to just see, okay, so what kind of sales did I have in Wisconsin for last month? So you could create a graph to do just that. And here are those fields that we talked about. So you're going to have to pick something that they give you, so you can't just create it. But if I pick billing state, well, let's say that there were states in there, but if there are states in there, then it would spit out, okay, every single state here on the graph. If I do, let's see, if I scroll down to this change the date, you want to look by month instead of just seeing specific dates. You can spit it out by month and by state. You can look at trend lines, different KPIs you can generate. So, and that's just very, very surface level. You can do a lot more. If I go back to this custom report builder, kind of just hit create new. Like, let's say I were to pick blank just to test it out. I mean, let's see, it'll do start by create. there are so many templates you could choose from. So many different things you could look at. And these are just bills. So, I mean, this list goes on and on. So it can be really helpful. And I would say it's something that, a lot of my clients were looking for more of that detailed reporting. And I think this provides a reasonable solution that's cost effective. Jump back to okay. And then I wanted to touch more on the limitations, but it can be kind of complex. And if you don't really have that background of, working in Excel or working with different data, working with different fields, I know I have limitations, but I can't hear them. Okay, so I wanted to talk briefly about the workflows. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's important for my clients that there is all of these different templates you can create within QuickBooks, and it's kind of like I said, an automated action, so it's just working for you essentially. For these reminders, these invoice and payable reminders, it kind of like streamlines your accounts receivable process. You're no longer going to have to sit there and go through that AR aging and see, okay, who's over 90 days? Like, do I have to create this email and now saying, hey, just a reminder, like you're 91 days past due. QuickBooks is going to know to do that for you. So every invoice that's set up under this template, you're going to go in, you're going to say every invoice that's 60 days over gets this reminder. Every invoice that's 90 days over gets this reminder. And on the payables end, it's going to remind you what bills are due. So you could go in and tell Intuit that you want an email, every single Friday for bills that are 30 days out. And this is going to do just that for you. You can also set up various things like employee, client, vendor onboarding. Hey, don't forget to get those like W-9s for all of your 1099 contractors. Don't forget to get the I-9s for your employees. Just little stuff like that, which can save you a lot of time at the end of the year.
So on the accounts payable end, let's say you get some invoices in the mail, like hard mail, and some are emailed to you. So you can upload into QuickBooks to get those reminders then, or?
For the bills. So
yeah.
What you'll have to do is you'll have to enter that bill into QuickBooks first. Whether you use it through the data sync tool, you could do that, or whether you use the mobile app, like you snap a picture, enter the mobile app, but you'll have to somehow, I don't think you can't just import it in like with a bill.com if you've ever used something like that where you kind of drag and drop the PDF. So it doesn't work that way, but if you enter the bill and it falls within the parameters of this automated task, it will remind you to pay that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you automate like a service charge if they're past 30 days or a finance charge?
That's a really good question. I don't know exactly. I would assume that you could just with the limitations and kind of what this offers, but I'm happy if you leave your product. It's something I can look
I was just curious because I know in the past you couldn't do that. And I also so like we had to use a third-party app, Lakeview Manager, to do that process.
Yeah, and I see this a lot with credit card fees and adding something like that service charge back. There isn't a way to do that right now, like within QuickBooks. You do need something like a third party to go in to add that extra fee so you're not eating it. And so that's why it's something I would look into. Can't for definitely say yes or no.
Yeah, no, just thank you.
Okay, so I have some tips and tricks, some stuff I learned along the way that I want to share with you. So on the screen, if you can see this, this screenshot. So this is all of the active keyboard shortcuts within QuickBooks. I know a lot of these, and it just saves me time as I'm working within the file. Like you're working in Excel, you kind of like you don't need to take your hand off the keyboard and put it on the mouse. So it can just save you some time. Same with the bank feed. So this is a feature that I really recommend to clients for them to use because it makes the data entry really painless. If you use it correctly, I've definitely seen I'm working with a client right now who called me and said, it's really weird, my bank balance is off. I'm like, well, you excluded 3 months worth of transactions. So the bank rec didn't tie, none of the expenses you entered made it because you didn't match it. So it's really helpful. It makes those bank recs that, we should be doing monthly, makes those bank recs go by really fast. Attachments, so we talked about the bill. So if you have the mobile app and you have receipts that you want to enter within QuickBooks, you could just snap a picture of that receipt. upload it through the mobile app, it'll remember over time, it'll get smart. So if you consistently go to Home Depot for supplies, it'll remember over time, like, oh, it's a Home Depot receipt, like, do you want to put this in supplies? It'll attach that receipt to the expense and just send it right to QuickBooks. So it makes some of that data entry really easy. And classes and locations, I'm not sure if you're aware of within QuickBooks what these are. So classes, I like to think of it this way. If a client has many locations, many stores, and many departments within their organization, he can set up, or he or she can set up the locations based on store, like there's an Oconomowoc store and a West Dallas store. Then he has a service team and a sales team and an admin team. He can set up different classes to track some of those expenses across each of his locations. And it just,
anytime you have locations or classes like this, this is a way to report income by location. So you can actually print a separate income statement. You can do income statement by location, income statement by whatever the class is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a separate financial reporting.
Mm-hmm. And it does create some of those reports that can help make decisions. You know, something, you have all this data, what do I do with it? So this is just a way to like add on to that. Okay, lastly, some tips and tricks I recommend for QuickBooks. So this is just stuff that I've seen and noticed over time. So starting out with hiring a professional, their whole advertising game is, it's so easy, it's so easy to use, it's so intuitive, and that's not always the case. Sometimes if maybe you're lacking in the basic bookkeeping, like the foundations, and maybe, that back of house stuff, it can be complicated, it can be really hard. So, I always recommend hiring a professional or getting in contact with somebody who knows QuickBooks really well. It can help free up some of your time so you could run your business. And same with the free training. So Intuit offers a ton of free training. Bookkeeping training, QuickBooks Online Plus training, advanced training, payroll training, tax training. It's all out there. Again, I have all these links. If you want them, I can send them to you. So I would definitely take advantage of that just because they're really good. I take the Intuit QuickBooks Online training every single year to pass my Pro Advisor, and they're really good. Multiple tabs. So when you're in QuickBooks Online, if you've never worked within the system, you might not know even what I'm talking about, but you can have multiple tabs open within QuickBooks, and it can be really helpful if you have your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your journal entries open, and your make entries. So you just go to at the top.
Yeah.
I know, I've heard that. Yeah. If you go to the top and you hit duplicate, you can I would have no more than 5 open because it'll slow down your system. So I would say you can have up to 5 open for it to work effectively. Lastly, I want to end on third-party integrations. So they seem really great in theory, right? Like Shopify, Amazon, eBay, PayPal, ADP, Paychecks, everything offers this third-party integration now. They want to provide this automation. It can get messy really fast if it's not set up correctly. So it can create a lot of work down the line if you don't have the right back-end links. You have to tell Amazon where to put it within QuickBooks, and if you don't do that right off the bat, then it could get really messy. Or you could use data sync with Excel to fix it down the road. And that's all I have for you on QuickBooks.
That was going to be a question of mine.
Oh, yeah.
With having a Shopify website,
Mm-hmm.
does that integrate with QuickBooks? And it sounds like the answer is yes, as long as you set it up the right way.
Yes. So, and I think maybe it's because of how many I've done, but it's really like a puzzle. So as long as you pick the right accounts within QuickBooks, it should work relatively easily. It doesn't always. There are going to be days where your connection's disrupted. Like you might miss an entire week's worth of sales and not even realize it. And then you're thinking, that's so weird. Like I run my Shopify report and it says I have 10,000 more in sales than what I actually show in QuickBooks. Like my cash is off. I don't understand. And it's probably some sort of data disruption. And if you know what to look for and you know how to get in there, like maybe want some training on it, get in there and you can problem solve really fast. And then it's kind of just being on top of it constantly as you work with it, and it should go pretty easily.
Thank you, Brittany. That was great information. So I'm just going to spend the last few minutes that we have here really briefly touching on Intacct, because I want to let everyone know that if you feel that you've outgrown QuickBooks, there is other options out there, one of them being Intacct. Intacct is a program that our firm also implements and trains on. So it is a true modular system, it's cloud-based. Intacct deals with a lot of the core modules, and then it has API, it's got some open database connectivity, so anything that you don't see in the core modules, revenue recognition, manufacturing, it integrates with. It's a seamless bi-directional integration with over 500 different programs. Extremely powerful system. When we talked about QuickBooks and we talked about location and class, those are what I would call a dimension that you would report on. Within Intacct, you get 8 dimensions. So, and you can define what those dimensions are. So whatever you need to report on within your business, the way Intacct actually has them coded right out of the box is location, division, project, customer, vendor, employee, item, class. We can change any of those because the next line, Intacct is completely customizable. I can even change the terminology within the program. So if I call it a customer and you call it a client, believe it or not, people get hung up on that. We can change it from customer to client. So anywhere in the system it says client and not customer. Same thing with vendors. We can change any terminology. We get custom input screens or custom fields in any input screen. So whatever you can think of, if you want to track the year you started working with a customer, you can add a field in the customer to say customer as of. I mean, it's just limitless the stuff you can do with Intacct. I tell people all the time, if they really, really want robust reporting, this is a system to look at. I tell people if you can dream it, I can build a report around it. It also has the ability to do reporting on non-financial data. And people wonder, like, what does that mean? Like statistical data. If you're into statistics and you want to know, I'm just going to use a hospital for example, or it could be a hotel. What's my revenue per booked hotel room? Or what's my revenue per bed occupied in a hospital? What's my sales per employee on average? There's a place in the system where you could say the statistical item is number of beds. And I could say that my capacity is 15 beds, I had 10 occupied. And then you could run a report that says revenue by occupied bed, revenue by bed and capacity. Like you could just, again, I could sit here and talk about that all day, but you also get customizable non-financial reports. So people wonder what that is. That could be something out of your vendor file. It could be something in accounts payable. Again, any of those, we talked about fields and tables within a field. In Intacct, you can connect fields. So in QuickBooks, you had invoice, and you could only use the tables within the invoice field. In Intacct, it will actually connect different fields or different tables based on a common field. So if within that 1,000 fields, there's a common field, it can connect tables. And what does that mean? If I want to connect my customers with my payables, I can do that. I have a nonprofit that has an audit every year. And she's got over 500 reports in Intacct, and sometimes I question, like, why does she even need this? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Because she'll have, like, a report that has balance sheet lines mixed with income statement lines. And I always question, like, why does she want this? But the reality is I can do it. Like, I can do it and prove that the data's right. I don't know why you need it, but we can write anything like that in the system. This is just an example of a dashboard. I know QuickBooks has a dashboard too. The difference in Intacct's dashboard is you can also link to outside internet locations. Like if you want to see stocks across the top, you can have stocks rolling across the top. Intacct will also refresh with live data every 6 minutes. Any screen in Intacct you can drill down into, very similar to QuickBooks. It's got a lot of drill down capability. The security features in Intacct are 100 times more robust than QuickBooks. So if you have a big company and you want to really carve out, like in accounts payable, not only can you say, I want this person to have access to accounts payable like you would in QuickBooks, in this system you would say, I want them to have access to add a vendor only. Or I want them to view an invoice but not change an invoice. So there's probably 50 or 60 different options within each module on things that you can give them access to. And the access is always add, edit, delete, view. So it's very granular on the security. And you can also look and see if something did change, who changed it. What was the date it was modified and who modified it. So it keeps all that.
You can also do that within QuickBooks. There's a constant running audit log, so you can tell who touched what and when.
One of the probably more powerful things about Intacct, and I won't spend a lot of time because this can get a little bit complicated, but they have different environments called shared environments and distributed environments. A shared environment would be you own multiple companies and you want to consolidate. They're separate companies and you need to report separately, but you can then consolidate. Or you have companies that transact at an intercompany level. This system is amazing at intercompany. So in other words, let's say company A has a bill out there, but company B accidentally pays that bill on behalf of company A. Because you link cash accounts to them, you go into company A's bill payment, you say, I paid this bill, but I paid it with this bank account, which happens to be company B's bank account. It'll automatically make the do froms on both sides of the equation. So extremely powerful for people that have multi-entities that they're transacting through, because oftentimes we see on the accounting end, those intercompanies never match. You have a due to from one side, one amount and a due from, and then you're having to trace transactions. You would never have that situation. And they also share the chart of accounts, vendor, customers, so if there's similarities in the companies, you don't have to duplicate all that. It's all entered at the parent level and then filters down. Intacct is significantly more because it is an ERP system. It's cloud-based, it's per user. They do have what they call small business packages available. If you only had one user, you would get one user and 3 viewers. So viewers can look at anything in the system. Typically, I say those are typically the owners, the CFO. So somebody can be transacting while other people view it. This is a system that's sold only through a retailer, so you can't just go out and download it. Whoever's offering support and implementing, they also have access, but they're not using one of your licenses. So we have a lot of our clients on it, and we're not using one of their licenses. 2 transactional users a month, 285, 3 users, 565. Those include 5 viewers, so you can have 5 people in there looking at it but not transacting. And then if you just, anything over 3 users, it goes to an individual, and it's $290 per month per user, plus you have a monthly database fee of $570. So I have a client that's got, I don't know, they've got 5, 6 users or something. They're probably paying around $1,800, $1,900 a month, all in. It's a pretty big organization, so when you start to compare this with other ERP systems, NetSuite, Envision, Acumatica, very competitive in pricing at that higher level ERP system. And that's all I have. I know I went through that really quick, but I think most of this was really geared towards QuickBooks, and we just wanted to let people know that when they outgrow QuickBooks, there are options out there that are very robust. So, any questions for Brittany or I?
Okay, I have a number of questions. Did I hear you say you can only get QuickBooks Online through your accountant?
Just the ledger. So that's this, which is very new. This ledger version is, I would say it would be good for tax-only clients, you know, who don't need monthly bookkeeping, you know, they're really just like, here's my box of receipts at the end of the year type of client. So that is the one that you can only get that through your accountant.
Okay. And then so I have 3 clients on QuickBooks now. One is very old and they're looking to go into this. How do I make the transition with them? How do they make the transition? Do we call into it and say, now we want to do this? Or what's the actual purchase process?
They made it very easy. So it's something that if you set up, so I have what's called a QuickBooks Online accountant platform, and it's free to use for accountants. And through that, what you can actually do is set up a QuickBooks Online profile for your client. You know, set all the billing directly to them. You know, you set up the profile. You could log into their QuickBooks. It's as simple as hitting a button now. So depending on what version.
You're saying to convert.
Yeah,
once
to
you have it
convert.
set up.
It's as simple as clicking a button within the desktop version. Now, with that, I would recommend only doing this if they are within 3 years of the most recent QuickBooks, just because there are some, your smile leads you to believe they're not.
Sometimes your clients don't always listen to you.
If that's the case, then I almost would recommend going through into it, because they have a team of specialists dedicated to some of those older versions of QuickBooks.
Okay.
Because what ends up happening is as it goes through upgrades, like your phone, as it goes through
We've
upgrades.
missed a few updates.
Yeah, certain apps, they're just not compatible anymore. It's kind of the same deal with QuickBooks. So as it goes through updates, certain features are no longer compatible, and they won't be compatible with the online version.
And then, is it really user-friendly that, let's say they all say yes, can I do this?
I would say yes.
With your help?
With help, yes. I think it's one of the most forgiving softwares out there. And so, I mean,
But I do think people,
they underestimate.
yes, I was gonna
Yes.
say they underestimate the ease of it, and I think we've all heard that old adage, garbage in, garbage out. And so it's really important to get it right on the front end. So, to her point, to hire a professional, even if it's QuickBooks, letting QuickBooks do the conversion, I would highly recommend.
So, to find what that process is, do we call SBA and say you need to hire Brittany for 2 hours?
Yes,
That's what.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and, you know, with some of the conversions, I think even if you go the route of using Intuit, not that I would say it's a horrible process, but there are certain aspects of the business they're just not gonna know. Their sole job is converting data. So they're not doing that double checking on the trial balance, you know, they're not doing the double checking on your chart of accounts. Is it set up properly? Is it set up correctly? They're not gonna look at that.
Do they give you a checklist of
Yes.
when you've updated everything, now go back and double check that what you backed up before you started is the same as what you're seeing today?
Yes, they'll give you a checklist.
Okay.
They'll say, here are the things that you need to look for to make sure they're right. But what they won't do is help you if they're not right. Like if it's not what it should be, that's kind of as far as they can take you. So they're like, well, we did the conversion, so if it doesn't match, we don't know why. And that's kind of where,
Sure.
you know, I come in and say, oh, it looks like for whatever reason, this entry was totally missed in the conversion, or I wonder if it has something to do with maybe you didn't run an upgrade before you did the conversion, which is important. Updating to some of the recent features.
Oh, so there you go, to work on Thursday.
And I think, you know, one of the things that, actually I'm glad you bring this up, because although we are an accounting and tax firm, our group does a lot of special project-based work, which is just, look, you may say, look, I love my accountants doing my tax return, but I really need help on this. QuickBooks being one of them. You could certainly engage us just to help with that piece of it. And, you know, we give you an estimate on this is roughly what we think it would cost, or this is Brittany's hourly rate. And then you could engage us just on that specific project. So we do that quite a bit. I will say that people find out how good we are when they're tax and accounting over, but you could certainly engage us on that piece of it, absolutely.
I have no problem pushing with your way.
Any other questions?
So I have a question that's probably more for Nancy, because Brittany already said she loves QuickBooks Online. I'm kind of more like you, where grew up in desktop. I like to have 25 things open, and then I get to QuickBooks Online. And in the beginning, you kind of had to okay, I have Internet Explorer and I have Chrome because I need two different things. But is there an alternative for the people now who are getting pushed out of desktop? Is there anything besides QuickBooks Online that they can go to? Because I don't know, is Sage 50 still even a thing?
I started my career on Sage 1.0 for DOS, Peachtree 1.0 for DOS.
I was going to say Peachtree,
Ages
me too.
Because it was, I don't even think it was Sage back then. I love Peachtree, so I am a huge fan. Again, not that I don't like QuickBooks Online, but I think if you were looking for a desktop, I think Sage has a little bit more, like with inventory, it's a little bit more robust in its reporting. But it's a desktop. We don't know how long they're going to be around. Intacct, their entry level, that's why they created that small business, was to kind of push people if they want a Sage product, but they want to be online, to push them into Intacct, which for some people might be a little bit more than they need. I think part of the reasons why I am a little more hesitant about QuickBooks is I am an accountant, and so to me, accounting terminology, so I have to put myself in the shoes of other people who aren't accountants. I want to work in terms of debits and credits, and they've kind of gone away from that a little bit to make it more user-friendly. And I don't particularly like the idea that you can open a transaction and just change it 5 years ago, or I've had clients actually hit the wrong year and be like 10 years in the future. And then all of a sudden you can't find these transactions. So my reason for being a little more reluctant about it is more the security and the audit. But I still think Sage 50 is a great product if you wanted to really stick to a desktop.
And one of the things I had a problem with QuickBooks Online is that the security, and I know you mentioned enhanced, but when do you get that? Is that only at the highest version? Because it used to be if you gave them access to AR, they got access to the income statement, which is not what...
Or they could find a way to get to it.
Right,
I've experienced that, where
So
even though you might not give them access to it, they could drill down and end up getting to it.
Yeah.
I think that's still
an
an issue.
Not in, it's, what's funny, it's not really in the advanced version, because you can pick certain aspects, like it's more advanced than it
But
ever
even
has.
the Plus is still kind of limited in that regard, or?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The QuickBooks Plus,
Yes.
it's
no,
still kind of
right,
limited.
yeah.
It is still limited. So, but I will say, are you still on the desktop right now?
That's fine, sure.
Okay, so they keep pushing this, QuickBooks Online, like right away. What they're not saying is that if you upgrade to the 2024 version, 2023, that is still being supported for existing users. So you wait time.
But we know that they really want to get out of that space, right?
Yeah.
Except for,
That's why they're not forthcoming with that information. Like they're like, oh yeah, but we'll still support it, for a little bit longer.
And I do think for somebody who's having to have files go back and forth, I love the online functionality. I mean, nothing beats that. I hate when we have to restore a file for a client and then tell them don't make any entries and then send it back and wait for them to restore it. Anything online, I think is better than doing that, but there's pros and cons, I think, with looking at them. Definitely pros and cons.
so when you were doing the custom report in advance, I assume you can save those and you
Yes.
can maybe automate so that you have a reporting package that would be produced or something like that.
Definitely. So,
And one of the things I had asked Brittany when she was preparing for this is, I know in the old days of QuickBooks, when you would export anything to Excel, it didn't have that bi-directional connectivity. So once you made all these custom changes in Excel, and then you made one change in QuickBooks and had to re-export and it changed everything back. Now she said they will connect back and forth. So to me, that's huge. To
Only
have
out of
that
it, only in
functionality.
advance.
only in advance. That is really true. But I will say, if the need arises for the advanced and you're gonna use those features, I think it is one of the most cost-effective options, given all that you can do with it.
Sure.
But like, if you're not gonna do job costing, you know, you don't, running reports, you're like, I don't really care, I just need my basic income statement, you know, you're limited, you're like, it's just gonna be me using it, maybe one other person, my accountant, then it's just not worthwhile to spend that much, so.
Yeah. Well, cocktail time.